is regaining agency in the trauma healing process through meditation and mindfulness integrated in psychotherapy. So, trauma is not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. That means that trauma is something that happens to you and it upsets you so much to the point that you cannot manage. Important factors that will determine whether an experience will be traumatic or not for you is who is there with you at the moment of the trauma, prior experiences of your life, and also overall personality traits. Trauma is stored in the body. That means that when trauma happens, we have actual physiological changes in the body. We have changes in the brain's alarm system. That means that the brain can no longer differentiate what's dangerous and what's safe. Also, we have changes in the levels of stress hormones. What's interesting with trauma is that trauma survivors feel that they are damaged to their core, that they are fragmented, they have a fragmented sense of self. They feel that they are beyond redemption. So I conducted an IPA qualitative research. 5 participants were interviewed, 5 women. All of them were and still are my clients. I had been seeing them for at least 4 months prior to the interviews, and they had different types of trauma. Isabel is 26 years old. She grew up on an island of Greece. She grew up with her parents and her siblings. She grew up with an abusive mother, emotionally and physically. What's interesting is that when Isabel would do something wrong, her older sister would get beaten by the mother. When Isabel's younger sister did something wrong, Isabel would get beaten. To this day, Isabel has a codependent, fear-based relationship with her mother and a very complicated relationship with her siblings. Dana is 27. She also grew up on a Greek island, and she has a long history of abuse. At 12, she was sexually abused by a 14-year-old boy. At 17, she was brutally beaten by her father and was denied hospitalization. At 21, she was sexually harassed by a man. And after all these incidents of abuse, she found herself in an abusive relationship, emotionally, physically, and sexually. Aphrodite is 36 years old. She grew up in Athens. Her whole family are very loyal Jehovah's Witnesses, and therefore her type of trauma is religious trauma. She was a witness herself until the age of 15. The religion was always very intertwined with her upbringing. She was never allowed to dress as the children her age. She was never allowed to attend birthday parties, to celebrate Christmas, Easter, go to parades. So she always felt marginalized and excluded. And this feeling and this pattern follows her to this day in all her relationships. Katerina is 34. She grew up in a small town of Greece. At the age of 4, her parents got divorced and her mother got remarried to a man who was diagnosed with depression. Katerina was never allowed to show any emotion in the house. She was not allowed to show joy. She was not allowed to laugh, make any kind of noises, be angry, because she was not allowed to upset her stepfather. Growing up, she abused alcohol, changed multiple sexual partners, and she had binge eating episodes. Finally, Lina is 40 years old, and at the age of 12, she was sexually abused by her uncle. What's interesting is that Lina focuses on the good lesson that got out of it. She says she learned how to protect herself, how to protect her loved ones. However, growing up, she showed signs of vindictiveness, especially towards men. At the age of 25, when a man tried to harass her sexually, after a few months passed, she invited him to go out, lured him into a hotel, drugged him with sleeping pills, took his money, shoes, clothes, phone, and left him there. And he thought that she was doing good for other women, that she was doing service to other women. What often happens with trauma is dissociation. Dissociation is our last line of survival. To better understand dissociation, imagine this. Imagine a child in the middle of the jungle having just been caught by a tiger. The child cannot fight or flee. So what it does, its body starts shutting down because the child has to surrender to its fate, let's say. It's about to get eaten. So the brain starts shutting down all these parts that communicate feelings, thoughts, and sensations. Dissociations basically says, I don't want to know what's happening to me. Dissociation is something we see to people who have been repeatedly traumatized as children. People who have been chronically dissociated have a fragmented sense of self, as I mentioned before. They have difficulty understanding and feeling the world as real. They have thoughts which they don't know where they came from. They have feelings that they don't know how they're connected to their thoughts. Forner used the phrase the land of the dead to describe dissociation. And what's really interesting is that one of my interviewees, Aphrodite, said that I'm a dead woman walking. So that was a very spot on phrase. And here comes meditation and mindfulness. Meditation is basically diving inwards, is paying attention to our human inner experience, our feelings and thoughts. And mindfulness is about being connected to our body and being connected to our environment and people around us through our five senses. So when dissociation says, I don't want to know what's happening to me, meditation and mindfulness say, I want to know and I pay attention to what's happening to me inwardly and outwardly. They say, I want to be connected to myself and to the world. This is a list of exercises of meditation and mindfulness that I used with my clients. Of course, we started with breathing techniques such as diaphragmatic breathing, then we did body scan, and we went to more advanced techniques such as the 7-step emotional release. Some common things between the interviews were that the trauma that is not healed yet reappears in the here and now through cognitions, feelings, and behavioral patterns. But it doesn't necessarily make sense, as I said, because of the dissociation. The word that was mostly used to describe trauma by the interviewees was burden, and the word that was used to describe healing and agency was freedom. All participants felt that they have lost touch to a part of themselves. As I said, they have a fragmented sense of self. So through therapy and through meditation and mindfulness, they wanted to reconnect to those parts that were compromised because of the trauma. As far as agency is concerned, the word that we have in Greek for agency is αυτενέργεια, αυτός και ενεργό. So it is to act for myself. It is to be able to make decisions for myself. Bandura defined agency as having 4 distinct functions. Intentionality, which is the intention to plan to take action. Forethought, the ability to set goals and foresee possible outcomes. Self-reactiveness, to be able to self-regulate, and self-reflectiveness, to be able to assess oneself and adjust one's functioning. Trauma healing, whether we define it as reassociation or as the shamans call it soul retrieval, is largely a physiological process, of course, which is accompanied by psychological repercussions. As I said before, trauma is not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. And this is our biggest fear in the end, that we won't be able to manage a situation. Meditation and mindfulness are two very useful tools that we can use to create a safe space where one can explore their trauma. They can create a safe platform where one can renegotiate the procedure of memory in the here and now. Thank you very much for your attention.